It's a beautiful Monday morning from the commercial capital of Nigeria. I am Tolulope Adeleru Balogun, reaching you from the New Central Studios in Lagos. We have the headlines first, right here on Business Edge. Inflation rate dips in Ghana for third straight month to 10.1%. And just to the west of Ghana, Nigeria to boost internet quality as broadband penetration spikes by 45%. And don't forget, before we wrap things up, we'll be bringing you NC4 to watch. And those are a few business stories we're keeping our eyes on right here on Business Edge. Again, welcome to the show. The inflation rate of West Africa's second largest economy, Ghana, has slowed for the third month in a row to a rate of 10.1%. However, food inflation rose to 12.6% in October compared to 11.2% in September. The statistician to the Ghanaian government, Kobina Animin, announced the current rate. He also disclosed that the main factors contributing to the reduction in inflation rate were housing, electricity, and transportation. Ghana's central bank disclosed that it expects inflation to be between 6 and 10% in the second quarter of 2021. The Ghanaian inflation rate is much less volatile compared to her West African neighbor, Nigeria. Nigeria recorded an inflation rate of 13.71% year-on-year in September 2020. Now joining me to discuss this is Tunji Andrews. He's a financial analyst and economist, as well as the co-founder of Our Bar. All right, so Tunji, are you with us?
I am with you. Can you hear me though?
Yes, I can hear you very clearly. Thank you so much, Tunji Andrews, for joining me. So let's look at this. The Ghanaian inflation rate has gone down a bit. We also have food inflation, which is also there as well. But the very first question I would ask is, this inflation rate, is it an aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic? Is it what we would expect if COVID-19 had not been in play in terms of the economy of Ghana? What do you say?
One of the things that we have to cast our minds just before the lockdown, the Ghanaian president did mention that they had been able to acquire a major loan from an international organization. I think they said about $100 million. If I can't remember that amount, but that was supposed to go straight into direct palliatives and making sure that the Ghanaian people had food during the lockdown. And one of the things we must always remember, especially in African countries, is that inflation is directly tied to food. Mm-hmm. If food prices are going up, inflation will go up. And if food prices are stable, inflation will remain stable. So what happened in Ghana is that the money that they were able to get at that particular time went directly into food distribution and, basically subsidizing the amount of food that was in the market. And generally that would reduce inflation. Unfortunately, on the reverse, we also got a loan, and I think we even got a larger loan. But I'm sure that you have seen pictures of people, videos of people going to smash open and vandalize palliative
warehouses.
Warehouses. So that definitely affected food. And of course, we did see the supply chain of food being affected in Nigeria. So definitely that affected our inflation numbers and is making ours worse, while Ghana is getting a better serving of inflation.
But you said that typically when you see food inflation rising, overall inflation goes up. But this is not the case, particularly with the Ghana numbers that we're seeing. Now, we're seeing a drop for the third month in a row to the overall inflation, which is now at 10.1%. But food inflation is rising on its own, and that's 12.6%. Why do you think their own situation in this context of overall inflation and then food inflation, which we'll get further into, why do you think there's a difference there?
So there are, food inflation is a very, very strong possibility and a very strong point, and it has continued to reduce over a number of time. But here's the second thing. The other factors which also affect inflation in the Ghanaian situation, things like fuels that go into transportation, that get into supply of food and services, things like cash supply also in the Ghanaian situation have improved dramatically. Now, while food may have increased this month, if you look at previous months, you would have seen that food inflation was reducing. So it's a bit of a payoff on the Ghanaian situation, and they are just benefiting from having managed COVID better than most of their African peers. Because if you look at the general African situation across sub-Saharan Africa, inflation has been rising in most African countries.
And it's interesting, you talked earlier about, of course, some money that the Ghanaian government had received. They got over $9 million, and that came, of course, with people asking questions. I know the IMF approved $1 billion for them to fight COVID-19, and part of this is also about stimulus. So let's talk about stimulating the economy, and that's a conversation many African economies are having now. Would a stimulus package from the government help, considering that it is still an election year and people tend to throw money at situations when elections are coming in, and particularly when an incumbent wants to come back or a political party is trying to curry favor? So would a stimulus package help? Would it be sincere? Would it actually reach the necessary people, or the intentions as well?
I think I am totally tired of poverty alleviation and what are the words that we use in Nigeria? Because it's basically stimulus, but we've tended to give it a new name, and a very dangerous name in Nigeria. And I will explain why. You see, in every country, we must always do every single thing we can to increase value and improve productivity. Because if I go to a community and I give that community shovels, and say that I'm trying to help them improve agriculture, I have done something. But if I also go to that same community and I come with a plan for proper irrigation and I give them one tractor to be able to clear their ground easily and make sure that the productivity increases, I have done also something, but I have done something to multiply the ability for them to produce. Now, the problem with Nigeria is that every single time we come up with stimulus packages, we are looking at giving handouts as against looking for where we're going to increase productivity. And this is a problem because everybody that you give 30,000, 50,000 sees it as their own share of the national booty.
But so can you say that that's the same situation? But Tunji, can you say that's the same situation happening in Ghana with the possibility of a stimulus package, with, again, an election year as well? Just in a few weeks, some of these elections are going to kick off in Ghana. So do you think that this is something that could be a potential way out of this situation for the Ghanaian economy and for Ghanaians?
Okay, so yes, you see, unfortunately, African leaders like to give money. I don't want to be racist, but yes, it is what we are. But here is the difference, the slight difference between Ghana and Nigeria is that Ghana has been able to open its borders to business, qualified business from across the world. So what you're doing is that you have people who are creating multipliers of. So, for instance, let me quickly point out something. So I saw a story of somebody, I think in Akwa Ibom or something, who went to the community and gave cassava stems to the people as empowerment. Now, cassava stems, if you understand cassava as a whole, you understand that it is actually a weed. It's easier for you to grow cassava. It's actually more difficult for you to stop cassava growing than for you to actually grow it. That is how easy cassava is to grow in Nigeria. So to go there and give stems is amazingly weird. But like I said, what Ghana on the reverse is doing in that same situation is creating multiplier effects so that when you give the people that 30,000, it goes directly into something they can plug and play for productivity for themselves, as against giving them 30,000 to go to a market which already has higher cost of food, higher cost of services. So they are really just at square one. You might as well have not given them anything. So what a government must always do is to increase productivity. That is their job. That is their job, really, not to give money.
So finally, on this food inflation thing, if we see food prices rising in the developed world, for many people it's an inconvenience. But when you come to places, a lot of countries here on the continent, if food prices go up, it could be the difference between getting and going hungry and getting enough to eat. And there are different reasons that food prices are currently going up. Meat, people are eating more meat these days as well. Corn, which is one of the world's most common staple, if it's not the most common staple, is now being used as a biofuel. We're also seeing insecurity in terms, you can look at some of the situation here in Nigeria, but food insecurity is major. Climate change. So if we're looking at rising prices for Ghana, looking at rising prices in Nigeria, looking at rising food prices across the continent, but specific to Ghana now, how do you suggest the Ghanaian government get a handle on this so that it doesn't affect the people later on? We're coming into Christmas, we're coming into colder weather, we're coming into harsher times. People are still trying to get back on their feet from coronavirus pandemic and the lockdown. How does Ghana respond to rising food inflation prices?
I mean, the simple way is to just continue to intervene in what you call it, the value chain of the market. And the reason why this is important is because there are parts of the world you can go to any time of the year and find fresh mangoes. They don't grow mangoes in those places, but because they have adequate storage, they have adequate facilities to be able to keep, and they have a value chain that makes sure that there is easy access from storage to market. They have a controlled cycle, so there's never scarcity in the market. The problem we have with Nigeria is that we have cycles for everything coming through. So we have mango season, we have guava season, and that is a problem because when guava season is in full effect, the prices drop of guava, for instance, and then when it is going out of the prices start to go up, and then when it is out of season, it is very expensive. What every African country must really know how to do is to make sure that that chain from beginning to end remains seamless. So it needs to create access roads to the farms. It needs to create storage, adequate storage, especially cold rooms, so that it can have the stuff at markets at every time they want it. But I wanted to just quickly do this. Breaking news, the National Bureau of Statistics just dropped Nigeria's inflation numbers now.
Okay. I'm
not saying like 2 minutes, like now, just right now. And headline inflation increased to 14.23% for October, up from 13.71 in the month of September. So you see that we're still going higher when it comes to inflation in Nigeria. It might hit 15% before the end of the year.
The numbers that you're sounding now are numbers that must be ringing as warning numbers, warning bells for the Nigerian government. And even as Ghana is recording overall inflation coming down, but rising food inflation, it's necessary for our governments to be much more strategic. And we also know that the border is remained closed between Nigeria, Ghana, and a number of other West African countries. And a lot of people have pointed to this being some of the issues that are affecting food security and food inflation numbers in Nigeria. But we'll get into those conversations, of course, I'm very sure later on. Tunji, stay with us. We're going to take a quick time out. So when we come back, we come to Nigeria, where the Minister of Communications and Digital Economy says that Nigeria is now very ready to take the digital economy seriously. They're working on plans to increase broadband penetration, and we'll see what this is all about. Stay with us. Now, Nigeria's Minister of Communications and Digital Economy, Dr. Issa Pantami, has directed the Nigerian Communications Commission, NCC, and the National Information Technology Development Agency as regulators of internet services in Nigeria to ensure that the quality of service improves. The minister added that broadband penetration in the country has increased to 45.43% as at the end of October 2020. This is due to an increase of 4,061,731 broadband subscriptions between September and October 2020. He explained that the notable increase in broadband penetration was as a result of conscientious implementation of the National Digital Economy Policy for the overall benefit of the economy to achieve a digital Nigeria. In particular, the Nigerian National Broadband Plan for 2020 to 2025, along with the harmonization of right-of-way charges across the states and protection of critical national infrastructure across the country, among others, has had a significant impact on the broadband penetration. Broadband is critical to sustainable economic growth, and according to the International Telecommunications Union Broadband Series, broadband continues to contribute to economic growth through more efficiency in business processes, acceleration of innovation, and more efficient functional deployment of enterprises. According to the minister, a report titled "How Important Are Mobile Broadband Networks for Global Economic Development" has shown that a 10% increase in mobile broadband penetration results in a 0.6 to a 2.8% rise in the gross domestic product. Now, Tunji Adeleru, financial analyst and co-founder of Our Bar, is still with me as we get straight into this conversation about Nigeria's digital economy. Tunji, businesses have mostly moved online, particularly with the COVID-19 pandemic, and of course, improving quality will help, but the cost is still a major factor, and the amount of data one gets for what one pays. Where are we in that regard? Is the cost reflective of an economy that's really putting the digital economy into the limelight?
I honestly don't think so. If you want to look at what the digital economy has done in terms of trying to grow Nigeria really as a whole, it's weird because you would expect that the government would put more eyes towards trying to find collaborations to accelerate what it is we have as concerns digital connectivity. The problem with broadband penetration in Nigeria is the cost. It's too expensive to roll out in some places. There are just some parts of Nigeria where if you roll out digital broadband, you're wasting your time, because I'm wondering who's going to use it in those places. So you find out that it's mostly, you find the fastest speeds in the urban areas, you find the fastest connection in places like Lagos, Abuja, and it's still a problem because even the telecommunications companies, they don't see the business sense in taking it to those places. So they want penetration, they want to expand their networks, but it doesn't make business sense for them. But if we can be able to sort of create a kind of infrastructure that makes it cheaper for these guys to be able to roll out in those places, I think we would have quicker broadband penetration. But for now, we're just going at a pace where we could do a lot better. Honestly, we could do a lot better.
And do you think the ministry is doing the work? Because it was earlier that the Federal Ministry of Communications and Digital Economy announced that they had completed 11 projects to drive the digital economy program that they have. Many have identified Nigeria as one of those on the continent very critical to driving Africa's overall digital economy as well. So let's even look at the work that the ministry is putting in. Do you think they are on the right track, even if we are yet to see the telcos really sort of step up to join in this advancement?
For the fear of asking what the ministry is doing.
Okay, let me enumerate. Let me enumerate so I can help you better. So they have emergency communication centers in Ilorin, Kwara State, in Calabar, Cross River State as well. There is a school knowledge center in Gombe State, an information technology innovation center in Kogi, a tertiary institution knowledge center in Delta, a new neighborhood post office in Delta as well, remodeled national mail exchange center in Bayelsa, an e-health data sharing center in Bauchi, virtual examination center in Borno, information technology capacity building center in Jigawa and Imo states. Those are the 11 projects that the ministry has presented and says this is what they're doing towards driving that digital economy.
Great work. Great work. Yeah, so I think here's the thing. If we're going to be honest with ourselves and not play around, that is not what drives penetration. What drives, because I don't think anybody was taught by the government how to use a mobile phone. I don't think anybody was taught by the government how to use a tablet or computer. It just became something that everybody around them were using, and they kind of saw the interest in it, and they started, bought one and started using it themselves. If there is internet connectivity and it's cheap enough for the people in the rural areas to use it, they will learn how to use it. Many of them use the calculator kind of phones, those ones that have flashlights. The ministry did not set up schools to teach them how to use it. It was because it was usable around their areas, and it was because it was important for them to communicate. They learned how to do it themselves. What the ministry should focus on is trying to bring prices of internet connectivity down so that it is accessible in those places. And trust me, it will roll out. I went to a rural community in Jos recently, I think about a year ago, and it has its own prometric center. Basically, there's a school there, a very rural school. I'm talking about proper rural school. It has its own prometric center, and it was provided by one of the telcos. The school just went to the telco and said, you know what, there's a school here. We think we can be a prometric center. Come over, and they did it. They set it up. So it's not really about all those things that ministry is doing. And it's all, my mom calls what they are doing imele. If you're not Yoruba, I apologize for that. I don't know.
You need to translate for non-Yoruba speakers.
I don't know. When you're doing things just to show that you are doing activity, a lot of activity without progress. Yes, so it's called imele. That's really the way I see it. If you want to really work, I mean, if you go to Japan, go to China, they are not setting up things like that. They are just rolling it out, and people in the communities, the rural communities, are signing up.
But let me interrupt. Let me ask you a question that also has to do with the social side of this. Now, the NSARS protest ended not too long ago, and we've seen a number of politicians talking about some kind of social media regulation, some kind of internet restriction as well. Across the continent, the number of African countries that have actually restricted the internet in the past 1 year has grown from previous years. So when you sort of look at this conversation and you're hearing from the Minister of Communications and Digital Economy that this is what they're planning, but then you see conversations from politicians who will either affect this or sign or lead in policy talking about social media regulation and internet restriction, you're wondering if these are they on the same page? Because if you restrict the social media, if you restrict the internet, we've seen what happened with Uganda and how much money Uganda has lost and how much more difficult it is for people to do business. So these two conversations are literally happening simultaneously. What do you make of that?
I've always wondered the level of conversations that happens in the National Assembly and the houses across the country. And I say this because one of our biggest resources as a country is our human capacity and our exportable human capacity, not generally physical exportation. I'm also talking about the ability for people to work remotely. India and China have been able to tap into this effectively. So you find out that you could be in the US and you call your telecoms provider, and Ramji from somewhere in India picks up your call,
phone,
and he attends to you. Now, of course,
Tunji, you have to make it quick.
India.
20 seconds. We have to go. 20 seconds.
All right. So my thought is basically we need to just make sure that the conversations do not clash. Social media is not the internet. The internet is not social media. We need the internet to be able to make productivity for a lot of the Nigerians that do not have jobs today.
All right. Tunji, I'm very sure we're likely going to have you back as we look at the numbers coming out from the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics today. But thank you very much for making time out for us on Business Edge.
Thank you very much for having me.
We're going to go straight into NC4 to watch as we wrap things up, and that starts us off in Northern Africa, where Egypt's Sohang Governorate receives about 5.8 billion Egyptian pounds in public investments. Now, public investments directed to the Upper Egypt Sohang Governorate in the fiscal year 2020-2021 now stands at 5.8 billion Egyptian pounds, making a 48.6% increase from a year earlier. This is according to the country's Minister of Planning and Economic Development, Hala El Said. We now move to Botswana, where Botswana's Power Corporation, the state-owned Botswana Power Corporation, intends to purchase 10 megawatts from Botswanans over the next 12 months. The transaction will be part of a solar rooftop program recently launched by Botswana's Ministry of Mineral Resources, Green Technology and Energy Security, Lefeko Mwagi, at the University of Boto in the capital as well. In Botswana, the government wants to increase electricity production in the country. Morocco's House of Representatives approves 2021 finance bill, and the House of Representatives has approved the country's 2021 finance bill defining the state's budget for the next year. The proposed 2021 finance bill got the backing of 59 members of the parliament, while 29 MPs voted against it. The House of Representatives' approval of the legal text pushes it closer to being signed into law. The bill was first approved by the Moroccan Government Council on October 16th. And finally, Nigeria's President Buhari signs amended banking bill into law. The president signed this bill into law, which is an amended banks and other financial institutions bill that seeks to improve loan recovery and the overall resilience of the country's financial system. A key feature of the law is the introduction of a credit tribunal to improve loan recovery and address the incidence of high non-performing loans within the financial system. This is according to President's spokesman, Garba Shehu. And NC4 to watch brings us to the end of this edition of Business Edge. Thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget you can head to our website, follow us on all of our social media platforms for more business stories from across the continent. And until next time, I do wish you a very profitable Monday. I'm Tolulope Adeleru Balogun.